Good afternoon. Jay offers more insight, and that is the topic of introducing and explaining the commission structure and the opportunities to the client.
Yep. So a lot of agents like we talked about before, have a difficult time talking about money. They have a difficult time bringing up money to a client. But in this new world that we're going to go into, you are going to have to set, negotiate, and collect your fee, and it's not going to be a delta. It will most likely be 100% of whatever you want to collect. And so there's going to be several different commission structures that you could use, right? So we talked about it early in a couple of different sections before about whether it's an hourly rate, a commission fee, or a percentage of the commission or the purchase price. But you have to look at your market and you have to look at what your competition is doing as well. So I don't really put a lot of weight into, I don't care if people are doing flat fees or whatever. I have to understand my value, and that's what I'm talking about. So if you understand what value you bring, and we talked a little bit about this before, is that if you're providing exceptional value to a buyer's agent or to a buyer that other buyer agents aren't doing, then you should set a fee, and it should, in my opinion, be a premium fee because you're offering premium service. So ultimately, it's going to be that if a buyer comes to you and wants to use your services, you're going to have to talk to them about a commission structure or commission fee, whether it is, like I said, a percentage or a flat rate, doesn't really matter. But how are you going to do that? And so I think that's the issue that we're going to fall into here very shortly, because right now in the next 3 to 4 months, as we continue into this process, there's going to be a very difficult time, a big window there for agents to get caught into showing houses and there not being a compensation as an industry norm and standard like it has been. And so we talked about this earlier. An agent will do that once and probably never forget that ever again. So the question comes into, how do I set it? What is my fee going to be? I can't really answer that, but I can tell you how to do it. And that's where we want to really get into.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the different types of commission structures that there are. I know we briefly touched on it in a different section here, but I really want to take a deep dive into it, because no one structure is going to be a fit all for everyone. So even as an agent in wherever, Anytown, USA, I might lean toward one particular structure that I really feel very comfortable with. But then I'll walk into a situation where a client is not comfortable with that. So then I have to kind of switch gears.
Sure.
So I, as an agent, need to know what structures are available, how to structure that properly, and how to present that in a buyer representation agreement. So can you touch on all of those points?
I can. And number one is you're going to have to contact your broker to make sure that they're on your page. They've got your back when it comes to this, because they have to be the one that lets you agree to make these changes on the whim, right? But as Victoria said, if you have a set structure that you like, it's never, this is my fee, and if you don't like it, see you later, hightail it out of here. There's times where you have a situation, and I don't really deal necessarily with first-time buyers, but there's a situation, maybe a first-time buyer maybe doesn't have the cash, right? Maybe doesn't have the money, right? So, or there's a situation where you're trying to put the commission in closing costs, right? A lot of agents don't realize that, at least in Arizona, check your state and local, laws and rules on that. Well, we can include commission and closing costs, and sometimes those closing costs are already eaten up by credits from an inspection, right? So how does that commission happen? Or the people just simply don't have the money, and the deal will not go through if they have to write you a separate check. They need that money for closing or closing costs. So I think personally that you have to be really good at understanding A, your value, and B, you have to be malleable a little bit to the commission structure should it need to change. I never let commission get in the way of a deal, and I've always had the option, and I've done it several times, where I had to throw in a little bit of commission to get a deal done. And I think if it's good business, it's good business. So it's never a hard, fast rule that my fee is my fee and I never change it, right? When you go into a listing presentation, sometimes you got to negotiate your fee. That's okay. Commissions are negotiable. They should be negotiable. And they all should be negotiable based on what you're going to provide. So, if I have a buyer who comes to me and says, hey, I found the house, I'm buying it, I just need you to help me write the offer and do it. Yeah. would I discount that a little bit? Sure. Why wouldn't I? I mean, if it's good business, if I can get him to write me a couple referrals, then why wouldn't I do that? Right. So what I'm trying to
agreement, when you're talking about these agreements being negotiable, and they should be, but the strength of any agreement is your ability to come in with absolute conviction, confidence, and be able to articulate that properly.
Sure.
So I really want to go there with you.
Got it. Okay, good. Yep. No, I think, when you start presenting a buyer broker agreement or any kind of agreement, being uneasy or squeamish about it is not going to get confidence in the eyes of the person you're presenting it to. So yes, 100% it's confidence. This is what I bring to the table. This is my value. This is my fee. And here's how we collect a delta, or here's how we collect it should there be no offer from a listing agent to the buyer agent. And then here's some alternatives on how we can collect or lever or get it outside of you writing a check at close of escrow, right? So those are very, very specific
things. Give me an example of that. When you say, here's how we can get it. So we start out with, if there is no commission offered, this is my fee. So in other words, I'm just going to use any number. I make $10,000 when this house closes.
Right.
When we go out, I'm going to, work in your best interest. I'm going to find you the house that you have demonstrated that you want and need, maybe. So once that happens, when this closes, I'm due $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
In the event that there is compensation, and hopefully it'll still be available, offered by the listing agent, and they only offer $5,000, you would now be responsible to only pay me $5,000.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And if they pay the whole thing, then you would be responsible to pay me nothing.
Correct.
But in the event that they are not paying, this is my fee of $10,000. What happens when the client says, I'm not willing or capable of giving you $10,000? Where do we go from there?
So, great question. So there's two things. They're rarely unable or incapable. It's either one or the other. Either they're unwilling because they've never done it before. So you got to go back and articulate your value and letting them know what you bring to the table. And if they're incapable, it's actually a little easier than you think, because a lot of times that can be paid, whether it's through the listing broker, because we can still negotiate it, even if there's nothing being offered. There's nothing that says I can't pick up the phone and ask that listing broker to offer me something. Doesn't mean I can't get the seller to pay for it in the form of closing costs. It doesn't mean that I can't even negotiate it in the purchase price. I can certainly negotiate that in the purchase price of the contract, and then have that credit given back from the seller to the buyer to me. Right. So there's different ways we can do it. And again, please check your state, local rules on that. But
and your lender, right?
And your lender, by the way. Yes. And so who knows how that's going to change either, right? We don't know how that's going to look going forward, where lenders may have to include that into the amount financed. But as it stands right now, they don't. So I have at one point had a personal guarantee on a monthly basis from a client, where they paid me $100 a month for 5 months because they couldn't come up with the difference. So again, you have to be okay with it. But if you're going to set your fee and you're going to say this is your fee, you got to know how to collect it. If somebody says I'm unable and unwilling to pay for it, then you just have to identify, is this somebody that you're going to want to work with? And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. But again, guys, if we're all talking the same thing, right? I'm not the anomaly out there, or the contrarian out there trying to ask for money. Now I am. But in the future, when everybody has to, it's going to be the norm, right?
So now I have another question for you. So you have a buyer who is unwilling.
Okay.
And they say, you know what, $10,000, I'm just not willing to do that.
Sure.
But I am willing to pay up to $3,500. So at that point, do you restructure how you're going to represent them?
You could. You can't restructure your fiduciary because that's solid. That's completely the same. It can't change. But it could sway you into changing how you look for properties or where you look for properties. I may just send you a link and say search on your own, and when you're ready, this is my number, and call me, and we'll go right through.
I'll negotiate on your behalf for $3,500.
Yep, exactly. So again, you guys have to set your own fee and what you're worth. I had this conversation with my nephew, a quick little scenario. Tenants, right? People who want to rent houses. I don't know what it's like across the country, but in Arizona, the compensation for a tenant is $100. right? So we've all done leases before and represented a tenant, and it's just as much work as representing a buyer. So a lot of agents tend not to want to work with them. Well, what happens to these tenants? They're out on their own because they have no representation. They're trying to find properties. They're going to the listing agent or the landlord tenant or representation, not getting full representation as they should, because now it's limited representation or dual agency. So I was talking to my nephew and I said, hey, I've got all these tenant or all these renter leads. Why don't you call them? And he goes, I don't want to call them. They're only paying $100. And I said, why do you think they only pay $100? He goes, well, that's all they're offering. I'm like, well, what's the minimum you would do a lease or work a lease for our tenant? And he said $500. I said, that's way too low. Way too low. Raise that up, like $3,000. And he's like, what? And I said, why don't you charge? I said, here's 50 of them or 25 of them. I said, call these people and tell them that your fee is, I think he settled on $2,000. He picked up 4 people that agreed to pay him $2,000, right? So he just made $8,000 and he did it in a month and a half.
Right.
So my point is that it doesn't matter what the compensation is from the buyer or from the listing agent. It's what your value is. And these tenants were like, I've been trying for months to try to find a house and I can't find it. I will pay you whatever you need to help me. And that's what we have to put into our buyer presentation, is that we're the medicine to the pain that they have. If we're just going to be the needle in a stack of needles, we're not going to get our fee. We're going to get pushback, and we're going to get people who say, I'm not willing to pay you the money because I don't think you're worth it, because I think I can go, somewhere else and get it cheaper.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's talk about other ways of getting commission that is a little bit different, a little bit out of the box. I mean, we're used to the percentage, so we know how that works. You just talked about, setting your own fee, changing things up a little bit. What else is there?
Well, they can just write you a check. They could write you a direct check. Again, in Arizona, it's legal. You can have that. No issue whatsoever. You have a buyer agreement that says, I pay you $10,000. I can write you a check. I could write you 3 checks over the 3 months of $3,000. Like, that's up to you guys and your broker.
Now, I know Scott hasn't interjected, which is surprising, because this is something that he always talks about and says, why are we not paying that up front, so that we avoid the amortization on the loan if we build it in? It would be a lot cheaper if we just pay it right up front.
100%. No, that is ultimately the cheapest way to do it. Is look, if you write me a check for $10,000 as opposed to baking it into the purchase price, and let's say you only keep the house 5 or 6 years, you're still paying more than $10,000 of commission by putting it into the price. It's cheaper for you to pay it up front than it is. And if you do the amortization schedule, it's that way. My conversation was with somebody who doesn't have the cash and doesn't want to put it in the loan, but they're willing to pay the fee. And so you could do a promissory note, right? You can just write up a promissory note and says, Mr. and Mrs. Smith promised to pay me $3,000 a month for the next, or $3,300 a month for the next 3 months. And that's fine too. Again, check your broker, make sure that's fine. We've done that in the past. That's not an issue.
And I would imagine you could even pay by credit card.
Yeah, no, Venmo, credit card.
Yeah, we've done all those things. I mean, I think those are amazing ideas. Just like you may get new windows in the house. There's a company that you'd pay and they would finance. You could finance it the way you want.
Sure. No
prepayment penalty. Gets you in the house. Pay when you want.
Exactly right. Yeah, I don't think there's a hard, fast rule. It may be with your broker or your state, but I think we have to think about things and go, look, if we're going to get our fee and it's not going to be the traditional way we typically get it, then you got to be okay with being a little out of the box when it comes to paying the fee. And what's interesting, when you get people to sign an agreement that pay your fee, a lot of agents will just say, okay, Merry Christmas, don't pay me. A lot of people are like, you know what? No, I signed the agreement. I'm going to pay you. So it's shocking to me how many people are like, no, I signed the agreement. I told you I was going to pay you. I'm going to pay you.
Well, in that case, Jay, you're talking about an unsecured note. What about a mortgage? You could put if your bank allows. Mortgage itself. It's a second mortgage, and unless the bank does not allow any secondary financing. But why wouldn't you owe me a note? Here's a note.
Sure.
Put it on and who cares if it stays there for 19 years?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you could totally do that. I've not done that, but if I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. You're paid for compensation. It's a fee for services rendered that you agreed to. They agreed to. So don't be afraid to collect it. And as Victoria said, don't be afraid to walk in there and say, this is my fee. And knowing, even if you know that your fee is higher than everybody else, I actually prefer that. I don't know about you, but when I go shopping for things, I sort from high to low on pricing. I don't shop from low to high, because low to high means the low is cheap and it's not worth it, right? So we've all bought things that we have remorse on. And why did I spend a few dollars extra to get that one item or whatever it was? Specifically if you're into guns like myself. But my point there is that if you buy services, you have to be really confident that the person I'm paying the services for is worth the fee. So understanding that presentation's got to be spot on, and you've got to articulate your value in every step of that presentation. And you got to bring up things that other agents won't bring up.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's always the hourly rate, and I always go back to that, because, things are changing. And with the internet, with technology, you had mentioned something earlier where you said, well, maybe I won't even show you houses. You'll go out and look at it yourself, and then you'll just contact me to do the negotiation, or you'll contact me to guide you through the steps. I can do that on an hourly rate.
Sure.
So there's all different ways of doing this. And that's also something that you teach. How to,
and that hourly rate might work out better for both clients, because you're really paying for your knowledge. You're a knowledge broker at that point. You can let them know about the neighborhood, who's done renovations to their home, which street has better trees, things that Zillow can't tell them. So you're local. You have awareness of local market. You may know that there's a new supermarket opening up over there. So they're okay with the search. They would just go to any open house, or they can make even an appointment with the listing agent. I mean, if that's what your arrangement includes, so they may be happy. Buyers may be happy paying a lower dollar. You might be happy paying a lower, accepting a lower fee. I mean, I think all it would take is your email and a consent by the listing agent to show them the house.
Sure.
That could actually work in reverse too. So if I'm licensed in Arizona, like you say, right? So I really just specialize in Tucson, Arizona, right? But I have somebody who wants to buy a house in Scottsdale, but I don't really know the area in Scottsdale. Well, you go talk to the listing agent, go do your search, go around, figure everything out. When you're ready, I'll walk you through the steps of buying a house. Once you make the offer, I'll negotiate for you, and I'll do that. But I'm never going to go there. I'm never going to show it to you. But this is my hourly rate to do so.
And there's another element to that. What if you have resources to the right professionals, the right mover, the right home improvement? It might be the right lender, the right title company. They can't get that from the listing agent, and they sure don't know it themselves. So you really, as I say, a knowledge broker. I can get you the person who's going to immediately be reachable. They're responsible to me. I believe in them. You're coming to me for true advice, counsel.
Guidance.
Yes.
Professional
Right.
guidance. Yeah.
And it makes sense, because you could do it from your office.
Yeah, and depending what market you're in, a lot of the people who buy houses in our market are lifestyle, right? So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the knowledge of the lifestyle that they want. It's not necessarily the four walls and the roof of the property, but to your point, it is information that, hey, if I want to be within 2 miles of a golf course. Well, you can't really be within a half mile of a golf course in Scottsdale. But my point is that if you know of things that other people don't know, then you become more relevant and become more valuable. So I agree.
Well, even the point of negotiation.
Don't know about it.
No,
Sometimes they know the lifestyle already because they've been visiting here for the last 5-10 years, and now they're looking to retire. They know exactly where they want to go.
Yep.
They know exactly what they want, how much they can afford. All they need is the professional guidance of how to put it together.
That professional involvement might be as little as, I know the listing agent, because I know that in Palm Beach Gardens, I would really not need anyone to help me, but I would know, hey, listen, can you get my offer accepted? And to an earlier point that we missed somehow is, why wouldn't the broker with the winning bid make more money? There's my reward. We just won. I mean, why would everyone get the same? Why wouldn't the winner get more? Why wouldn't that incentivize us all more? Get me the house and I'll give you another % or dollar figure. Why wouldn't that be a thing? I mean, as a broker and as a lawyer, I always collected a greater fee for reducing closing costs. If we did a seller's concession, I would charge, and they would be happy to pay. You didn't come up. In New York State, there's 2 other taxes: mortgage tax and the mansion tax. Those don't exist elsewhere. So now your choice is to come up with tens of thousands, or let me finance it with you, with permission and consent and understanding of everyone. Why wouldn't they pay for that professional services? I never understood why lawyers and brokers would collect the same or expect the same when so much more is gained by the client. Why would it be a fair exchange?
It's a great point. I think I did this one time on a listing, and you can also do it with buyers, where I was going on a listing presentation. The guy was beating me up on commission. This is early in my career. And I finally I wanted the listing so bad because it was a perfect location. And so I was setting my fee, and negotiating it. And finally he just says, look, I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to pay you, X percent. Let's call it 5%. And I wanted it. I was going to take it, and I thought, well, I can't really just say yes, because then I just proved the fact that I can't negotiate my own commission. How can I negotiate this guy's fee or this guy's offer, his money? So I said, here's what I'll do. I'll take the 5% if I sell it for X amount of dollars, 600,000, right? If I get 700,000, I want 7%. If I sell it for 800,000, I want 8%. And he's like, you think you can sell it for 800,000? I said, you pay me 8%. You don't think I'm going to try? Because I can guarantee you one thing, that the guy who cemented his loss at 5% isn't going to try to get you 800,000, because it's not linear, right? It's marginal increase of commission. So we can do the same thing with buyers too. You can do that in reverse.
Amazing point.
Yeah.
Amazing point.
That's a really good point.
I got the listing, and he's like, well, I got
this-
nothing to lose. And I sold it for 700. So
Well, and then, okay. And the flip side of that, why would the agent make the same? And when in the former market, a buyer's agent was telling everyone, waive everything, pay over asking, you have to, and they get paid the same as the listing agent that got the seller more than asking.
Yeah.
Why was that ever equal?
it shouldn't be. It should all be based on performance, in my opinion.
Well, that's why we're seeing a lot of the changes that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So, Jay, you teach all of this in this certification. You really take a deep dive into it. You break it down, things that maybe we haven't thought about, or maybe we thought about it and we didn't know how to structure it properly. It's all there. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jay, I love the instruction, and that's hardcore nuts and bolts, but really sharing the perspectives and offering the insight is really, really the unicorn here, because you've heard, we always did it this way. That's not how it's going to work here.
Yep.
And these, pushbacks that really, really are baseless, and they've been reliant on a situation that may not and probably should not exist. And that's the clear cooperation policy, which is under attack.
Well, I want agents to know that the fear of this is, it's not fear. We all went through this, right? So this is really relatively easy to do. And it's going to take some time, effort, and energy, but don't be afraid to think about how to set, collect, and negotiate your fee. Even though you've never done it, like you said, it's been the industry norm and standards not to do it, because we've had this beautiful compensation offered to us as an agent. And that's going to change. So, but just don't be afraid to take the steps to get into knowing how to set your fee, understanding your value, and it makes you just such a better agent and a better business person.